A very good morning. Okay, some greetings are going on. I'll call the class to order, even in the absence of Musomesa Oscar. Good morning and welcome to the Capital Gang. It's a strange, rare voice for you, but yeah, I am in control. I'm sitting in for Oscar, who is stuck in traffic somewhere. I do not know where. And I think we'll hold him accountable because he does that all the time to the gangsters that come late. Good morning. We're going to have a couple of topics today for discussion. Of course, we all know about the death of Honorable Mohamed Segirinya. We also heard about lawyer Aaron Kiza, who was convicted in the court-martial. We're going to discuss that. And yes, the CDF is off Twitter. To start off, we'll begin with Ofonopondo because he was the earliest in class today. Yes, Ofonopondo, you're welcome.
Thank you,
Say
Patricia.
good morning to the listeners.
Good morning to our listeners. Good morning from Kapele Biong and Mulanda. You know, these days I'm in Kapele Biong.
Yeah.
Pronounce it in English again.
Kapele Biong.
Yeah.
Kapele Biong. Whatever it means.
we will give him a mark. So that, and I must say, Kapele Biong is treating you well. Before the show started, I told Oo how he looks younger. I guess because he spends more times in the trees and whatever he's doing there.
I now eat from the garden to the plate.
Healthy eating.
Yeah.
Good job.
And no stress of car fumes in Kampala, honking of horns of the cars, no.
Interesting. Abdul Katunti, welcome to the show. Please greet.
Thanks, Patricia. Good morning to our listeners.
Why is Abu in a suit?
And it's a Saturday. Do you mind sharing?
Decked in a necktie.
I am from a meeting and I'm going for another meeting. I'm attending the summit on behalf of the President of the Pan-African Parliament.
Mm-hmm. I will skip the gentleman seated next to you and I'll go direct to the gentleman that is directly opposite me. Please say good morning to the listeners.
Good morning, Patricia. Thank you for having me.
And you are, I believe you have a name. I didn't want to introduce you.
Angelo is my name, and I'm glad to be here. And welcome to your listeners.
Good. Then I'll go back.
I thought when they say name, for those who are well read in English language, it is Angelo Izama.
I didn't want us to go
name?
there.
I was just playing. So Patricia has forgotten my name, which is kind of embarrassing.
No, I actually asked you to introduce yourself to the listener, not to me, but that's fine. Yes, the only lady on the table this morning, please greet.
Yeah, you are not doing very well with the lady representation on the gang.
Oh, when
but
you're
I'm
in
here,
charge.
and Nepal,
You're
our
the one
digital
sharing
person is a lady.
Come on, that's being greedy.
Good morning, listeners. My name is Agatha Taire, and I am happy to be on the show this morning.
Derek?
Thank you, Patricia. Good morning to the listeners. It's always a pleasure sharing thoughts on the gang.
Okay, so we'll dig in straight away to our first topic today, which is the death of Honorable Mohamed Segirinya, who will be laid to rest tomorrow. Yesterday, Parliament paid tribute, and not many a times do we see members of Parliament in unison about anything, but yesterday seemed or sounded or looked like they all had the same voice. So I'll begin off with Abdul Katuntu. You gave your tribute, and maybe you would, if you don't mind, you'd share with the listeners what that meant for other people not being in the house to mourn their fellow comrade, and just who you think Mohamed Segirinya was and how he did as a honorable member of Parliament.
Well, thank you very much, Patricia. First of all, my condolences to the family and friends of the late Honorable Mohamed Segirinya. But at the same time, we did lose also another colleague of mine, one of the longest serving members of Parliament in the history of this country, the Honorable Babadiri. She served Parliament for 25 years. First as a member of Parliament representing people with disabilities, because she was physically impaired. She was blind. But that did not restrict her, or she didn't have self-pity. After serving 2 terms as a member of Parliament for people with disabilities, she went and contested for an ordinary seat as a district woman representative of Koboko. And she also passed on. But somehow you people in the media are more interested and maybe understandably so. So we lost 2 colleagues, the Honorable Babadiri and the Honorable Mohamed Sejelinya. But both of them, first of all, the Honorable Babadiri, I had the opportunity to serve with her. She was a member of my committee when I was chairperson of the Commissions and Statutory Authorities Committee. A lady who really, if you are talking about rising against all odds and thinking some of these, what you would have thought are challenges that would have restricted her rise, she managed to get past them. Being able to serve Parliament for that long, given that she had that disability, and a very intelligent woman at the same time, we really mourn with her family and then the people of Koboko. So is Sejirinya. Many of them, actually both of them, have something in common. One, they don't seem to be people coming from privileged families like me and others. Sejirinya had even bigger challenges. I mean, his level of education was also not that to talk about. And he comes to a metropolitan place like Kampala from the village, takes it by storm, and eventually rises to the topmost institution of government in this country. It is unfortunate he didn't have all that time to serve because of health, and then the incarceration he had for 2 years. And he never saw justice, unfortunately, because the case was never prosecuted. He was there, denied bail for 2 years. He was sick, and somehow he managed to get out, but his health had deteriorated. You know, as I said yesterday, in this country, opportunities are there. And if you dream big, anything is possible. And both the Honorable Babadiri and the Honorable Sejirinya managed to achieve that. Today, they knew politics more than those who think they went to school like me, because they know what people want. I gave an example that even if you are this professor with the 5 PhDs, if you competed against Sejirinya in the Kawempe North, you would not win. Even if you are the richest billionaire and you went with the Sejirinya in the Kawempe North, you would not win. Why? Because he knew exactly what the people wanted, the politics of today, the contemporary politics. And many of us who seem to have gone to school, many of us who seem to say we are experienced, we don't realize that. And the Sejirinyas of this world have managed to beat us at that. That's why even that house where I sit today, I can tell you, I don't know how many professors we have today. Oh, you should have some of these statistics. But I don't think there are that many. I can only think, of one. one or two. I'm not so sure of any. Hey, that's true. The only professor I know is Mushemeza. Who is the other professor there? Yeah.
I'm told you have many masters.
Okay. That's a topic for another day. I don't want to be controversial here morning. So, one, if you're looking for the professors, there's as nowhere as it is. If you're talking about people like a Segirinyas, they are in abundance in parliament. Actually, they are the majority in parliament.
The voters are in parliament, and the candidates are outside. The people who are supposed to be in parliament are outside the parliament. The people who are not supposed to be in parliament are the ones in parliament.
No, and now the people don't look at it that way. The people who think those who should be in parliament are the ones they brought there. So that is what people say it is elitist talk. So to me, the Segirinyas knew the trend of politics in the country, and they have grabbed it. And they are doing well. They are doing well. Whether that is the future we need, that is also a case for conversation another day. But he arrived. He made his mark. It was a journey worth walking, and a lesson to many of us, especially those of us who went to school, who have this privileged background and think we take so many things for granted, and yet the people are looking at things differently. What I would think me and Ofonopono would call antics, and Oko would say these antics of Segirinya and so on. Actually, that was his asset to come to parliament. Then a person like the Honorable Babadiri, that you can be blind and go and compete for an ordinary seat of people with sight, and you beat them twice. It's not all that easy. It's just, moving against all odds and winning. So both Honorable Segirinya and Honorable Babadiri are winners, whichever way you look at it. But I conclude on a lighter note. The Honorable Babadiri had this joke. She would walk in the committee and she said, "Mr. Chairman, I have seen you." And then they would all laugh and so on. I said, "Yes, you're most welcome. Please take your seat." They said, "Yes, I'm taking my usual seat." As if she could see the seats and so on. And in the corridors, because people who are blind have got this unique instinct that they recognize voices. That immediately I would say, "Yes, the Honorable Babadi," say, "Honorable Katuntu, how are you?" And she would do that literally to many colleagues. So even when she was blind, she would communicate easily with people she wasn't seeing, but she would recognize their voice. Let the Almighty rest their souls in eternal peace. They made their contribution to this country.
Thank you. Good morning, listeners. Sorry I'm late. I was stuck on the road. Talked to OO. He couldn't do any magic. It was just my bad luck of Onobondo. So,
poor planning. Because Munyonyo Road, the police announced.
I live there.
Over a week ago, that because of the ongoing meeting, the summit, AU Summit on Agriculture, the road would be closed. And they gave
It
maps.
is not closed. I should tell you that they've managed that road very well.
Yeah.
They closed some gaps and then
we have
they...
been having other delegates,
yeah.
but today we are having the principals, the presidents.
It was my bad luck, so I watched...
No, not your bad luck, your poor planning.
No. My bad luck. I'm commending them. They've done well. They said they'd close the road. They haven't closed it. So, and I've been going to Entebbe and everywhere. It was my turn. But anyway, Ofonopondo.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mohamed Segirinya.
Well, I don't know why people are praising him. For me, I would say, one rock down. One rock down. The better. But also, that's part of the NRM politics. It is NRM which... He has been a stone thrower, tire burner, and so on. Yes, the NRM politics has allowed people to rise to hitherto unexpected levels. On another show, I said we had Oliver Zizinga. She didn't know how to write her name. She didn't know English. But she rose to captain in the NRA, UPDF, and they are the ones who brought NRM to town. She was among the 38 historical members of the NRC, the interim parliament, and rose on. And if you look at the people who brought the NRM revolution, majority of them, overwhelming majority, are not educated. Thanks to the NRM politics, the Segrinyas and many, many others, including in NRM, have risen. Honorable Babadiri was a teacher, actually. She was,
Yes.
she was a secondary school teacher. She went blind midway her career. She wasn't born blind. She went midway.
After she started teaching?
Yes, after
Yes,
she
when
started
she was a
teaching.
teacher.
When she was a teacher. I think she got some ailment which eventually affected her sight. But I studied in Uganda SS, now Uganda Girls, for 6 years. That school also had special needs education, the blind, the school for the blind. So I studied with blind children from S1 to A6. And apparently when somebody becomes blind, all senses concentrate on hearing and touching. Those children would walk the school and master the compound. They know which building is where. And those days we didn't have many facilities, we didn't have technology. But they would sense, they would know where the kitchen is, where the laboratories are, where the classrooms are, where the libraries are. And then they had these sticks, the walking stick. I don't know what they call them. You just knock.
The white sticks.
Yes, and then. And so it is not surprising that Honorable Babadiri was able or would be able to know members of parliament by voice. There are those I studied with this 40 years ago. One is in Murago here, but even when I meet them today, say, you Ofono, they're able to recognize you by voice 40 years later. May their souls rest in eternal peace. So, and I know, even when I say it is a light comment, but Segrinya was exceptional. Those were the young boys who would come to our Vimezas. You remember 2000, 2001, 2004, we had these radio talk shows, open air talk shows in the Bulange, in the Bulgato, and then they would rush there to come and debate with us political, current affairs. And sometimes they would come and discover that they are much better than those of us who thought we had gone to school, we studied political science. They knew current affairs. Then when the telephone calls came, then the mobile phones came, they became talk show callers. Yes, talk show callers. It became a profession and occupation, and they mastered. And I think that's how Sejirin actually came up from the talk shows, callers. Then he rose to councillor, Lord Councillor in the KCCA, and then member of parliament. And I agree with Abdul Katuntu that we, the educated, actually don't understand the communities in which we live. That's why you will not find, even when you bring a professor and make him a minister in the government of Uganda today, they will underperform because they don't appreciate the communities which we serve. You remember Professor Lugubrias. You bring Professor Mondo Kagonyi is still alive. I hope he's listening. You see people who are floating on society. They don't understand the society they are serving.
Those two did actually.
Yeah?
Those two did. Not.
I'm saying
I think you've given wrong examples.
maybe, but
Yeah,
Professor Bodo is still alive. He can defend himself, and I know
he doesn't have to defend himself because we know him. We need to judge him fairly.
So, no.
One or two of, I don't have to say it, we'll talk about affair, yes, but not those two examples you've given.
You know, one professor said the Ugandan, the milk from Ugandan cows can't be turned into powder. One professor of veterinary was a minister. The president asked him whether the milk from cows in Uganda can be turned into powder. He said no. Powder milk has to come from cows in Norway and things like that. Now today it has been disproved. We are now turning our local milk into powder milk. So that's the nature of the educated people in Uganda.
Thank you, Oo. Angelo.
I feel like I have to defend the education. I think Dr. Besje made it a point of criticism to bash the elite. I find, this sort of criticisms kind of very unfair, but I'll take it from the position of the so-called common person. In Madi, where I come from, the elite, elite families. We're an Aboriginal people, so we are organized. Madi and other West Nile communities are Republican in nature. Everyone is their own boss. But some people will peculate the surface. I come from a group of families, you would call them, they call us Opibonji, which means the sons of chiefs. But my understanding is that the Ugandan peasant, it's a term that I don't like to use actually, it's a member of any of our communities. They have an inborn desire to progress. That is why they spend a lot of their earnings sending their children to school, right? And the understanding is that with the acquisition of knowledge, I won't say education, that these people will then, lead progress in the way they organize these communities, progress in the way they do commerce and skills and things like that. And so I don't want to disparage education. I think the obsession with the so-called elitism is something that has come. It's fairly new in our Ugandan society. If you look at the 1920s and 30s and 40s, the progression was quite clear. In fact, those days we used to say of Opondo that the educated Ugandan had one foot in the town and one foot in the village. Yeah. But there is a class complication that has come with the growth of the economy, with urbanization, with contact with external worlds, that people now tend to separate. That if you are educated, and there was even a debate recently I saw online that was looking at the product of traditional schools versus others. I think this is just a distraction. Yeah. Okay.
I agree with you entirely, and we go back to eulogy.
Yeah. On the eulogy, look, I have my own.
Teacher you were.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Not surprising, being the teacher you were.
I think people should embrace.
Go back to focus.
Indeed, NRM had a very beautiful concept called individual merit, and maybe let me just focus the eulogies on this particular thing. I loved individual merit. I thought that that's the best way, a most organic way to organize society, to recognize the individual effort of those who are energetic members of a society, and for the late Honorable Sejirina and Babadiri, as Abdul has said, these were people with the drive and ambition to make something out of any circumstances that they found themselves in. And we congratulate their families and their communities. I found with particularly Honorable Sejirina, the thing that I noted the most about him, and which is something worth emulating, is his commitment to social causes. He was very committed to his community, and by commitment I meant that he tried to mobilize resources. He, organized healthcare under difficult circumstances, and he spoke very boldly about his ideas of social justice. And to that we thank his family, and we thank him for his service to the country. And leadership in Uganda continues to be seen as the technology for progress. And I think for all of us, it's important to reflect on the types of leaders that we want, regardless of their background.
Yes, thank you. Agatha. James tells you Agatha Agambye. She's happy to be on Negang today. Mugambe, the word should have been lucky.
Yes, that's very true. I would never have imagined I would be on the gang or anywhere else other than prison today. So yeah, I am very lucky to be here. I started with how shocked I am at what O said.
Shocked?
About the death of Sejirinya. Shocked because there is a woman that was arrested for jubilating about the death of El Tumwine. I don't know if you guys remember. So we have been told before that, even if you disagree with these politicians, you shouldn't jubilate their death. And these are politicians that have tormented us, that have tortured and arrested, and Honorable El Tumwine in particular had said that the deaths in Kampala were justified in November 2020. And it's because of that, because that shortly, his death came not long after that. And that's what was in the minds of everyone. But someone was arrested for celebrating his death. Is celebrating a death of someone that never harmed anyone. Never. You can't find anyone who has been in jail, who has been tortured, who has been killed by Sejirinya or because of Sejirinya. On the contrary, Honorable Sejirinya was a victim of the state that the government that Honorable Pondo speaks for. I found it very disturbing that even in death, there is, but also there's freedom of me to feel this way about that. But yes, about Honorable Sejirinya, I will not be far from what Honorable Katuntu here said. I have heard about his story, his rise to where he was before he died. He used to be called the Dovoziri Chebando. And I was told a story when he was unwell, how he came on a matoke lorry from Masaka and started selling matoke in Chebando and kept calling on radios, and that's how he became a star. And for someone to do that, you have to be a unique person. And like Honorable Katuntu said, he was very popular in Kawempe North among his people, and that means someone who has worked for his people. His death, I think we've seen many people blaming government for it. I wish that government one day can tell us what Honorable Sejirinya was in jail for 2 years for, and with evidence of those crimes that were accused of him. But most importantly, the issue of of bail. We lost Bob Kasango in jail. Bob Kasango had been convicted, but still it does not take away the right to life that the Constitution talks about. I think that when people have health issues, there has one of the principles, the grounds of bail is that, and people have shown this, that we need treatment, and our judicial system has been adamant, and I think this is really senseless deaths that we are seeing now. About Honorable Babadi, I don't know how I hadn't known that she had died. I used to cover Parliament. I think being in my short stint in detention and all, maybe I lost out on so many things. I used to cover the 9th Parliament, and she was there. And just like Honorable Sejirinya, she was also very popular in Koboko. I remember when, after Honorable Anita served the youth on the youth seat, she wanted to come for the Koboko Woman MP, and people told her, "You will be humiliated by an old blind woman," because she is very popular, and that's when a constituency was carved out for Anita. She was very intelligent, and yeah, I also look at someone with visual impairment like that, who had achieved all that, and who would speak in Parliament and people listen, and very, very brilliantly articulate issues. May her soul rest in eternal peace too.
You're Agatha, you're the lawyer journalist. So was there any evidence ever adduced about their case?
No, not that we know of. Their case has never been tried. Even now they have been out on bail. Not that they tried their case and either convicted them or discharged them. There was never any significant hearing. The court appearances most of the time were for bail application hearings. As you remember, there's one day when their bail was granted, but as they stepped out, they were rearrested. And it happens. They have taken it as a joke. This government of who is here celebrating his death. Nicolas Opio.
There are people who die who are not in prison.
Nicolas Opio was arrested, and he was in prison for about 3 months, and they later said they later dropped charges. No one ever compensates these people for taking away their freedom. We have had also the case of Olivia Taya and the 31 others, that for 4 years now, there's no evidence that has ever been adduced, and they are still in prison, apart from the few that were nailed before this government and came out. Others are still there. So even in the case of Sejirinya and Sewanyana, there has never been any evidence adduced that they were the ones killing people with pangas in Masaka. And even if you had evidence, if someone has shown the way Sejirinya showed on TV, his feet rotting, his health deteriorating clearly, we have a provision for that for bail under Article 23 of the Constitution, and especially where you have not yet even determined that this person is guilty of any crime, and this was refused. Sejirinya's mother, I don't think there's anywhere that woman didn't go. To Parliament, crying every day. To the Minister of Justice, Norbert Mao, crying every day. And he's here saying that other people who are not in jail also die. So you will say that other people who are not murdered also die. Then why is murder a crime? The reasoning like that, there's a reason why we have life expectancy in other areas, because there are things that can be in place and postponed or deter deaths of
so Agatha,
people.
in for that reason, the people of Masaka who lost relatives, that's an injustice to them as well.
So much.
Because
it's a very,
it
very,
means
very
that It was never investigated or anything.
Yes, it's a very terrible injustice. He has died on as a crime, because in this country, the constitution, as a criminal, the constitution says you are innocent until proven guilty, but it is the other way around. In practice, you are actually a criminal until proven innocence. But sometimes you're not even the one who is supposed to prove your innocence. It's the state, the same state that is saying you're a criminal. You wait to be at their mercy, and they say, no, we have dropped the charges. And this is so, it's not just unfair, it's an impunity that we really need to stand up against. I think the death of Segirinya maybe should serve as a lesson for both these in government, but also us outside, that let us really check this impunity before it gets out of hand. I don't know if it hasn't yet, if people are dying like this because of that, if people like Aaron Chiza are going to be in jail for 9 months because of the same impunity and people's show of might,
Derek, Agatha has reminded us, I had forgotten that they'd once been given bail. So why are people attacking the judge, blaming him, that particular judge, for keeping them in prison?
Thank you, Oscar. I will respectfully try to remind Ndugu Oo that you today threw your diction out of the window when you were coming here, because when you use the word rogue to describe Segirinya, you're totally off, because a rogue is an embezzler. Go check your dictionary, and you realize that there are many rogues that you have left in parliament. You have not described them the same way. I don't think Segirinya ever embezzled anything. I don't think, at least as much as I and you know. But there are many people in parliament who have been accused of embezzlement, and they are better placed to be called rogues. About the judge, Oscar, the public is going to pour out their hearts in whichever way they can, because they feel they are disillusioned and incapacitated to do anything. If the public were there to hold those in power accountable, I don't think the judge or even the whole panel that was in charge of the fallen Honorable Segirinya's case would be at peace now. But now, when you attack a person, when you attack a lame man with guns and stuff, he cannot defend himself other than maybe curse or hurl insults at you, and that's the best they can do. That's if they can actually have the time or the space to speak. Many times the judges, who are very well placed and very well equipped with the law, so what we, myself as a layman in the law, so as very good justice, or very good examples, or even very good items to give Honorable Segirinya bail to go and seek further medication, even when the government doctors themselves approved of the same. The judges, whether they had the spirits of their forefathers or the spirits of the forefathers of this country that still reigns on them, to deny the Honorable Segirinya an opportunity to go and get medication in time. Those sentiments are now coming out, and the public now doesn't have the law in their hands. The public doesn't have the firearms in their hands. They don't have the machetes. So what they are going to do is to go and rant on social media and hurl insults and curse. And all I'm seeing are curses against these judges. I feel That's many. That's what many feel, and I would actually feel the same way. That I'm not an expert of the law, but I remember one day when the Honorable Francis Zake was beaten during lockdown, was beaten from his constituency for distributing food to some of his constituents who are starving. He was beaten by the military, detained, and because of the 40-hour rule, he was produced in court on a sick bay, on that bedridden, and the judge stood his grounds and said, Honorable Zake is not supposed to be here. Honorable Zake is supposed to be in hospital. First treat him before you bring him to court. And it's the same sentiment that people expected the justices who are in this case to do. Stand tall on such an occasion and say, Honorable Segirinya is not supposed to be in my court. Honorable Segirinya is not even supposed to be in prison. Take Honorable Segirinya to hospital, and then you can bring him to before me, and I will judge him whichever way, depending on the evidence adduced against him in that manner. But when he refused to do that, when he couldn't see through the eyes of empathy for this man whose legs were rotting, looking utterly frail and very, very uncomfortable in life, and he continued to remand the man without advocating for his health, for his good health, then I think the justices and the judge wanted to judge a dead man. Probably now that he's dead still with these charges against him, I think they can produce him in court and the judge will be happy to judge him.
Do you think the parliamentarian talk yesterday, things will happen? At least there was unison on that.
There has always been unison.
Oh.
And the parliament is a very small magnitude for us to even measure unison. There has been unison of many Ugandans. Many Ugandans, I don't think
against torture
and all those injustices. I don't think the 200 or so MPs who were in parliament yesterday can bring out the exact picture, but they mirror what exactly is happening. The unison has been there. People in the wider community of Uganda, if you want to say throw a figure and no one will dispute it, at some point it has even been 95% of Ugandans saying let's stop this kind of injustice that's happening in our country.
Okay, Angelo, before we stop for a break, we can move on to our next topic. I'm reading from Andrew Mwenda here. It says, a group of UPDF officers insisted the CDF quit X until the reform and transformation of the army is complete. As a professional soldier, a patriot, a Pan-Africanist, and a man who loves the UPDF and Uganda above all else, the CDF conceded to the demand. So, have you seen that?
Is that about General Muhoozi leaving X?
Yes.
Okay. I was just going to go back to what Derek here said. I think, look...
I can allow you a minute.
Yeah, just a minute. Covering politics and security over 25 years, I have learned, there are events where individuals, for example, let me give an example of Godi Akbar, who's in jail now, accused of murder, and there was a lot of drama because of his politics. Eventually, for him, his case was concluded. He was convicted. But I remember speaking to security officers about the doubts cast about Godi Akbar's innocence. And I met him actually when he was out on bail. And I asked him, and with a straight face, he completely lied to me. These events are often treated, maybe Ofono Pondo can cast can provide a spotlight on some of them. What the military refers to as extreme prejudice. So, one of the injustices we have here in the case of Segirinya is that if he were indeed guilty of the crimes he's been accused of, to reverse what Derek is saying, the public has been denied the opportunity, not to feel sorry for him. Remember that massacre is a hotbed of really gruesome killings at the community level. Where is the justice for those who were murdered in massacre? From time to time, almost every election period, there is a community violence in massacre. And in fact, I think the numbers are completely underreported. In fact, I think they're suppressed. There was a time, Oscar, that me and Charles Mangusha were trying to find out what happened with the Kanungu massacres. I think one of the injustices again in that case, even if we found the report, was that the exact picture of what happened. Over 1,000 people dead. Many of them dragged, macheted, buried in toilets. We never got to understand what was going on. So I think that there is a culture that within our certain members of our service, that if they are convinced and they have evidence of your guilt, they will proceed to take actions against you, and in many ways not follow what Agatha has said here, which is that there is a public path where evidence is adduced before a public court and the matter is concluded. So there may be a need for us to encourage confidence in law enforcement and in the security services, that if they find, Abdu Katuntu has actually committed a crime, regardless of the politics of the situation, that, they should just make use of the courts, bring this evidence before the public, and allow the public to make a judgment on their own.
On that note, let's stop for a breakfast, and then I'll come back to the CDF.
1 minute? Is that 1 minute?
Kind of two. Welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang. So, Angelo, back to what I'd asked before the minute came up. I'd quoted from Andrew Mwenda on X, formerly Twitter.
A scholarly presentation.
On X. Well.
So, do you believe, as Andrew has stated, that it was a group of UPDF officers that insisted on a big man to drop his phone and delete the X account?
Andrew is the closest to the subject, and so I'll take him at his word. With regard to General Muhoozi and his activity on X, which has attracted, a lot of local and international attention, I guess for me, my view is the implications of what he was saying on his account. He should have been taken on his word. Whenever I read what he said, my impression was like, okay, he said those things, he must mean them, and that therefore the consequences of what he said must be taken seriously, considering his station in the society, how people perceive his future political ambitions, and the fact that he runs the army. And for all those reasons, if his colleagues in the army, as Mwenda has said, have thought this is the best course of action, which it is, I think, he should be congratulated for listening to them and, and focusing, as his colleagues have suggested, on administration of the military.
Agatha, which colleague would tell the general to drop his phone and drop his X account?
Sorry. I don't think there's any. If there was, he wouldn't have almost sent Uganda to war with his tweets that he has been at for the last I don't know how many years. So maybe, like he said in that farewell tweet, it was this time Jesus Christ that he listened to. But we've had these rumors, and really, like Angelo says, Andrew Menda would be best placed to tell you about. But we've had how he's been called into meetings with his father and his uncle Salim Saleh to stop this. But we also had openly when Rwanda's president Paul Kagame publicly said, I need to manage your Twitter account. So he was asking him to run by him whatever he's going to write. It seems he still didn't listen. I also know from some source that Andrew was also supposed to be sanctioning what he publishes. But since he is in the habit of tweeting at 3 a.m., I am sure all the people that were supposed to be seeing what he tweets would be asleep, and he would tweet. If you check many times, the tweets are deleted. But it is always too late because many screenshots. I never see his tweets on Twitter. I think we don't follow each other, but also I go on Twitter to really just write and go. I rarely read through the timeline. So I always find his tweets find me in WhatsApp. So by the time he deletes, he has many people who are also awake at 3 a.m. like him who take screenshots. I cannot believe we sit here and discuss the CDF's tweeting and how he has left, but yeah, that's what happens. His tweets recently were about beheading Bobi Wine, cutting off his nose, and everyone said that he had previously said it's a joke, that for him Twitter is like amusing or something like that. But I tell people that we would take it as a joke if someone, an ordinary person, went and tweeted, I will behead Bobby. But we still don't. There's a person who threatened the Kabaka and his family and he was in jail. We never took that as a joke. This person had no power to do that. But they want us to take as a joke that the army commander of the National Army is saying he wants to behead someone, especially a political opponent of his and his father's, and we should take that as a joke.
It looked ugly in international media, the way they presented. Army chief wants to behead opposition leader.
Yeah, but that's what it is. That's what it is. It's not that when he's tweeting, he's no longer an army chief. But also the fact that Oscar, do you know how many people are in jail over what they've said on TikTok?
Yeah.
Do you know how many? We are actually
on TikTok. Yes.
We are.
I was going to ask you that next. That you're the lawyer here.
We are compiling that list.
Can their lawyers now use this evidence and
say
appeal?
They were also joking, because this is not a law. But the thing is, we have compiled some of these cases. One of them was handed 6 years, and in that judgment, the magistrate Stella Maris of Entebbe said that in fact he's lucky. It's because he's a young man. I think he's 24 or in his 20s, that she would have given him a 20-year sentence for TikTok. But we want to treat...
Is that in the law? Is that 20 years the maximum?
You know, people no longer care about what is in the law anymore. But we are working on that investigation. We so far have 6 cases of TikTokers that have been convicted. Many of them, actually, they don't have lawyers. So they just have gotten them and sent them to jail. Like the one that was handed 6 years pleaded guilty. But this is someone who doesn't know the law. And you didn't allow them to have legal representation. So for me, things that happen in this country, I get so frustrated. And we go and get a young person like that from Karamoja and send him to jail for 6 years for saying on TikTok that Museveni should die or should whatever they have said. But we see the CDF and no one, at least let them posture and write to him and say, we are summoning you. No. Business as usual, and all these things have become so normal.
Yeah.
I don't know where this country is headed. Yeah.
Derek, is Agatha dreaming? Who can write to the CDF and say we are summoning you? These things only happen in South Korea.
So he's above the law.
It's an ideal situation that Agatha is speaking from, and I do agree with her entirely that in a normal society, which is not Uganda, because of course Uganda is not normal. In a normal society, a CDF is supposed to be under the chief, the commander in chief. Yes, and if no one else can write to the CDF, I know that the chief, the commander in chief, should do that. Let's just take an example. If the CDF was still General David Muhoozi, and he posts like that, I'm very sure he would be certainly fired. He would be court-martialed in public, and we journalists will be there in March India to cover the proceedings. And he would be called names by every general that there is on earth. But because Uganda is abnormal, the CDF will want to behead the top opposition politician in this country, and we will be convinced that to try to think that that's just a joke. And that certainly makes our country a joke.
Did you think it was a joke?
Absolutely not. But we are in a country that's a joke. So everything, even me thinking that it's a joke in itself is a joke. I have covered the court martial several times, especially the trial and the trial of General Kale Kaihura and the proceedings that there were, and the chitatas and whatsoever. And I would see that if the country conducted business in that way, we would be somewhere close to calling ourselves a country or a state. But I know that with the selectiveness of the law and its application in this country, we are always thrown to the far end of dungeons that have ever lived on the world. I know even the spokesperson has been on this show of this government, to demean some of these things, to also accept that the country he is speaking for doesn't deserve him at some point because of his intellect, because of his understanding of the things of matters, because of his judgments and analytics and analysis that he gives. He feels this country doesn't deserve him because the country is so much of a joke. So I think to the extent that you promise to kill the topmost opposition politician by beheading was maybe the last nail driven to the coffin. And probably the least they could do is either to call Elon Musk to deactivate that account, or to convince the man that bring your phone, and then they deactivate it from his phone, and then he must be busy looking for someone who can put it back. But I saw a statement that he made before he went off, and I hope Ndugu Oo that some of these misgivings in your government, that's supposed to be our government, and we normally are saying your government because we don't want to associate with it because we know what it has done and what's doing. We hope that some of these misgivings can be brought to book, can be brought to the law, and some of us feel that we are in a country.
I should tell listeners that you are seated in Semoju's seat, and you've
Am I speaking like him?
Worse. You have taken cynicism to an even higher level. Abdul Katuntu, is it a good thing that the CDF has retired from X, formerly Twitter?
Sometimes I just retreat to my library, get another book and read.
Is there a book that shows this situation?
I have 2 minutes to talk about. But let me say this. A couple of days ago, I was in my library, and somehow I got tired, and I was grappling with something in my mind, especially a certain group of people who talk about freedom, this thing called freedom. And I see them in a corner, because there is a lot of irresponsible communication, whether by those on both sides of the aisle, I may call it so. And I see Agatha talking about it now. Oh, these TikTokers, they are blah, this is their freedom, blah, 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 blah. And they will always have those arguments about it. Then another one does the same thing, but against, then they will go and blah, 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 blah. So let me say this, and I've seen it even in the US today. What you guys have been talking about more was President-elect Trump has just talked something about Canada, for example.
And Panama,
and says
Panama
that he wants Canada
Greenland.
to become one of the states of the, I think it should be the 51st states of the US. And the reaction it elicited the other side, including with the outgoing prime minister. And then Musk calls, you girl, what are you talking about? Then he goes about Panama also. And this, you're talking about the incoming president of the United States.
Actually worried about Taiwan and which is the other country, and Ukraine.
Yes. So
After 20th
guys,
January, they are toast.
as you go this Derek path of we are joke or we are bonomo, just think twice what's going on in the world. Just think twice, unless you don't follow quite critically what goes on in the world and so on. This sorts of thing you see Genome was writing is the same thing like President Trump is exactly saying, which elicits international condemnation and reaction. Because the others who take it seriously, the others who say, anyway, what do you expect from him? So we are now caught in this space called social media, and everybody is competing for attention, and they're doing sort of things which I don't agree with. Angela may not agree with. Then others said, yes, you don't agree, but protect the freedom. That is freedom. And depending on what interest they have in that particular one. Because I have seen some of these talkers saying the worst of the worst. And somebody saying, it is their freedom. It is their freedom. And this is the law. And then the other one also saying the worst of the worst. Says, why is it are they saying? I didn't say you, but I'm saying I know some people are doing it. You get it? So to me, Oscar, the world is faced with some sort of dilemma that we've got now this thing called telephone or computer. Just somebody wakes up at any one time, depending on the mood, and he posts. Others are supposed to be protecting what he has posted. Others are supposed to be condemning. The Democrats in the US, for example, they were trying to have a policy how they can control social media communications and so on. And the money bag Musk comes in and says these guys are now trying to curtail anti-free speech. So, Oscar and dear listeners, that is the corner we are caught in, rock and a hard place. Now I can go specifically to the Genome Horse communication. One, Genome Horse, I think in my view, should have realized of the two positions he's holding. One is the natural position, that is President Yoweri Museveni's son. And whatever he communicates, some of it will be visited on his father because he's the president. He should have realized. So you need to weigh the consequences of your communication. Because are you communicating what your dad is agreeable with you, or it is about you? Then two, he should have also realized that this is the army. are you communicating the position of the national army or your individual position? But the institution he heads is so sensitive. And it, as I said some time back, it is all about command, guidance, and directives from up. So sometimes a joke may be taken seriously by a subordinate officer. Say, by the way, this is what the CDF has said or has communicated. And depending on how he perceives it, sometimes he can even act on it. After all, that account was the official account of the CDF. And the communication, because these days anyway, all government institutions and officers have Twitter accounts, the way they communicate. So he put the institution and also the president in a very, very difficult position. And certainly the government. Because now you expect people like my blaza, the one I'm looking at, to defend. And then he doesn't know what to do. So what does he do? He runs to Kapele Byonga and hides there.
In trees.
In trees and coffee and so on. And when Abdu rings, he said, he's about to ask me about the tweet. He will not pick
by the way,
it.
came with popos and I saw downstairs.
Oh, yeah, he's doing a pretty
Pumpkins.
good job. Yeah, that's how we were brought up. Sometimes when things, you just go and go to the natural things. And how we grew up, our days, not the days of some of these people. This one, the Abunomo and Joe.
Every time I invite him when there's a hot topic in town, he says, I'm driving out to Kapela Byong.
And
there are some seedlings I got.
And I can tell you, that is the intelligent of blaz of mine, son of my father. So that is the sort of dilemma I put on. And the other day, I read the Chris Variomus. He's really, so, okay, I think, was it about beheading? No, there was a tweet by Jano Mohozi. I don't remember which tweet.
About the beheading.
Then he said, no, that is a banter.
About Sudan.
Yeah, about Sudan. Yeah, because you see now other countries had reacted. Indeed, like Canada was reacting, Panama was reacting, and so on. And then somebody now, the public relations office of Trump, must find a way of say, by the way, he may not have meant that, but it is a banter. He was thinking maybe cooperation. How does Canada, being the greatest trading partner of the United States, how do we trade? How do we put up, non-tariff barriers, and all those sort of things? Because you are trying now to do public relations. So, one, has Genome Hose done the correct thing? Yes, he has done, in my view. Yes, he has done. Two, Derek says, the president, the CDF, the commander chief should have written and so on. Maybe he doesn't have to write and give Derek a copy. But somehow, maybe there was a meeting. I said, no. I think, as of now, I think just quit this, please. It's not doing very well.
To Kenya.
But he didn't write to Kenya. He didn't write to the press and so on. He only wrote to Kenya, and somehow it leaked in the press and so on. And that's how the presidencies work sometimes. So to me, I think it is okay for the institution. It is okay for the CDF himself. It is okay for the presidency. And it's okay for our country. We let it lie and see how it will unfold. But Andrew says now they are going to have a podcast. I hope it doesn't also. Maybe Andrew now has to manage it. I think that is what I've been thinking.
Depends on the time the podcast will be.
Maybe
if
now
it's in the
Andrew
morning, we
has
okay.
to manage
at
it.
3 a.m.
And maybe that's what the general needed at that time. And all of us who are holding high position of responsibility, we need to have handlers.
First of all,
Abdul has accused you of sanitizing his words, of running away to plant trees.
I think the people in Uganda know that one of the most courageous people is Ofono, Opondo, Podel. I don't have to run away. Besides, on Jerome Hose's tweets, I have been clear.
That's true.
I have defied with the Minister of Information who said it was a banter. I have said that in the whole world, he's the only CDF who tweets. I don't know of any other. I don't know if you know even the name of the CDF of Tanzania. Do you know the name? Or the police chief of Tanzania, do you know? So I have been categorical. I said, my young brother, General Kainerugaba Muhoozi, was doing things that brings himself, like Abuda said, a son of the president, CDF, commander, into unnecessary controversies, sometimes disrepute, but also bring particularly those of us who speak for the government in a dilemma. And you have seen how my minister has lost some marks. But I don't also blame him. You remember when he said something about General Muhoozi, and he came for him. He said, the other day you were running under the bed, crying under the bed, and I had to rescue you. You remember the issue of Nebanda. And so in that situation, you pity Honorable Bariomosi. I'm the only one who can speak like that, by the way.
Why?
Because I'm an ideologue. I'm not just a public relations of government at NRM, I'm an ideologue of NRM. So I say what should be. This is not the first
Many
time.
times you have.
Yeah, this is not the first time General Muhoozi is quitting X. He has quitted before. I hope this time is for good, and for his own good, for the good of the institution. Like many people have said, if it had been another army officer who had done so, certainly it would be very hard on them. And they dare not. None of them has. So I think we rest it at that. We ask him, we demand of him to follow the rules that govern public officers, the rules that govern the army command. Because they are rules. And the army, you can't treat it as a joke. If you say we are going to attack Sudan and there is an officer at the border, what do you expect them to do?
Put the officers on standby.
Yes,
That's
so
one.
my young brother, I hope, I don't want to take Andrew Mwenda seriously, knowing that in my language we say Andrew Mwenda is like a tail of a cow.
Say it in your language first.
Luodo, youth young. Go think. Then you know the tail of a cow whisks from
one side to another.
So I don't want to take Andrew Mwenda seriously on this matter.
Because I was thinking of which colleagues, they could not have included General Elweru.
Maybe General Muhanga,
Okay.
Kayanja, Mwenda's brother, maybe. But I want to believe that General Muhoozi has reflected on the things he has been saying, and he has come by himself to this conclusion that for his own good and the good of the institution. But also know, Wandera, when the president gives instructions or directives or orders, he doesn't have to copy you. And you are not privy to the instructions of the president to the various officers of government.
But I was answering Oscar's question that who should write to the CDF?
I know the president has total command and control of the army. And you know, the president is a very patient man, he is strategically patient. He lets you do all manyanga, all mistakes, so that by the time he throws you out, you have no fallback position to have sympathy. He does that to all of us. You make mistakes and you think you are getting away with it. By the time he throws you out, you have no sympathy in the public. And as we say, the higher the monkey climbs, the more it exposes the backside. I hope my brother has quit for good.
I'm pleased you are using decent words. I was very worried when he started talking about the monkey. Let's stop for a quick break. We'll come back from the break. This is the capital gang. We move on to our third topic of the day. Let's start with you, Agatha. So it's good you don't read Twitter because people are also many tweets, especially with your ongoing fight with the president of the Uganda Law Society. Your own microphone, Agatha. Especially with your fight against the president of Uganda Law Society. So, as you said, you don't read, you just post and you move from there. So
Yeah.
but there's one that says that I'll send some of them to you so that you see them. But when I said, Agatha went to a police station, now she thinks she's Mandela. That's how poor people can be.
What you call a fight happened before I even went to a police station.
No, this one is... I was just reminding you that you are not reading, so there's a lot you are missing about you. But anyway, Court Martial sentences Aaron Kiza, a lawyer of one being prosecuted, to 9 months in jail. I'll ask Abdu about his etiquette in court, because that's also a different thing. But and then you stepped out to protest against that. But if she didn't protest for Malema Bilizi, Malema Bilizi, he probably had a trial. But for Aaron Kiza, what can happen?
That's the thing with people like Ofono Pondo and those that you have mentioned on Twitter. First of all, there is a problem in this country with the use of language. I think we should leave English and be using our mother tongue. Maybe we will not be misrepresenting.
Or
So
it would be worse if you allow
I am
mother
always
tongue.
being called and said, you have attacked, you have abused, there is a fight. If you see, I have challenged people to go to any of my tweets from the time I started tweeting and point out where I have insulted anyone. You will never find it. The tweet you're talking about of a fight with Semakade. Semakade wrote a statement about what they are doing to get Aaron Chiza out of that predicament. I simply asked questions about the steps he's talking about. And I asked those questions even in a meeting we had at Huripek in Makere, at Makere Law School, the morning after Aaron was arrested, where the lawyers came and listed about 5 legal avenues to take. And I asked them, why are you even thinking that these steps won't take the 9 months that Aaron will have been sentenced to? And they know that. That happened to Stella Nyanzi. Stella Nyanzi was sent to jail. There was an appeal. The appeal was heard and she was acquitted after she had already served the sentence. Was it 18 months? So I asked these questions in that meeting and I said, I do not think they will work because we have a case that has sat in the Supreme Court as an appeal for 4 years. A case about the trial of civilians in military courts. And that case, so the case is Kabazguruk and the Attorney General, where the Constitutional Court that is mandated to interpret laws and talk about their constitutionality said, no, the Army Court Martial was to discipline the army officers, not to try citizens. The Attorney General appeals, asks for a stay of execution. A stay of execution only works if there's a damage that you would incur, within that time, and it's irreparable. So let's say, but I'm telling you about the law, and you don't know the law. Oh, so you just listen. Did you study the law?
You don't have to answer. First concentrate on yours.
So let's say someone has won a case against your house, and it was about to be demolished. Now a stay is required so that they don't demolish your house before the appeal is heard. I ask myself every day, why was a stay required where someone is simply saying, try civilians in civilian courts? No one is even saying acquit them. That appeal, after they issued that irrational, unreasonable stay, is still sitting in court. So all these...
4 years.
Yes, 4 years. So if you have people saying that this has happened, we are taking a constitutional petition to court, we are taking an application for judicial review to court, it's going to take as long as the 9 months.
So should they do nothing?
So do something else that might put up some pressure, Now that's what I asked. And also, by the way, if there isn't, maybe do nothing. And that's what I asked Semakade. Fact finding. We already know Aaron is in jail. What are you fact finding? There were just questions, so it was not a fight. Now I said, I've been doing activism on Twitter for 3 years. I said, maybe it is not working, especially in this case. So we said, can we, by the way, I want to also remind you about my involvement in that. I and other lawyers applied to court to review the Kabaziguruka case in November. That case has nothing has ever been done about it. We also followed it up with a letter to the Chief Justice saying this matter is urgent because of this, what is happening, what is at stake? Nothing. So this time I said, let's march there and maybe meet the Chief Justice and say, this is this and this, And that's what happened. So, Aaron, I also want to address the question of you didn't do that for Mabilis. So you see, everyone has a boiling point, so to speak. Even a woman in an abusive relationship, the beating maybe that makes them act is not necessarily the most painful. It's that it has built up, and you have seen this built up anger. Everyone has a time they say, no, enough is enough. But also, like you said, Marema was given, there was a hearing. So a right to a fair hearing under Article 28 of the Constitution is an absolute right, non-derogable. You can't even say we have decided to dispense away with it. Aaron was not given one. You just summarily send someone to 9 months in jail. And I might not agree with Aaron's conduct. But if we are going to say that if someone walks the way we don't like, people that are mighty should send them to jail for 9 months, it's really, really a dangerous trend.
Senior Counsel, Abdul. Senior Counsel, Abdul.
I come from old-fashioned.
Wait, you have to go to the microphone.
Yeah, I am old-fashioned. I am not the
Banging table.
The type of these very brilliant younger lawyers. They have their own way of doing things, which is different, and sometimes not what I was taught in law school. One, the point which I want to agree with Agatha is one, that the Supreme Court should settle this matter for this country. Either way, such that debate is closed. Then it becomes a political debate thereafter whether we should change the law, specifically of the Constitution, or not. But as long as the Constitution Court took a decision, there's a judgment, well-reasoned judgment, and we've put that judgment on hold, and it's coming to 4 years. I think there is no reasonable explanation which can be given. And that we all agree. Now, if we agree, what do we do? You may decide to do what Aaron Chiza did, because you think that is the way to handle it. When you do that, there will be consequences.
To you personally?
There will be consequences, whether you want it or not. I mean, let us not. And that's why I think the debate is not being properly focused. We are focusing on what they did. We are not focusing on what actually happened. And if what happened, for example, Agatha, you are now Colonel Agatha. You are the chairman of the court-martial. And Ofono Pondo is Aaron Kiza, and he did what Aaron Kiza, what would have Agatha done as the court-martial or the court-martial chairman, what he have done. 2, what the consequences of the Supreme Court not doing what is supposed to be done has now caused the proceedings in the court martial not to be purely legal. It is now purely politics. It is purely politics, what goes on there. And which shouldn't be. Because you see, nobody since Dr. Kizza Besigye was abducted from where? From Kenya, nobody is focusing on what he did. No. What is being focused, or what is alleged to have done. What is being focused on is the abduction.
Yeah.
You get it? And then whether the court martial is the legitimate institution to try him or not. And since the legitimate process would have been a proper court proceedings, the Supreme Court has failed to do what is supposed to be done. Now we are in utter confusion and chaos. So you'll find, and I really pity General, what is his name again?
The court martial chairman.
Mugabe. I don't know what he's going to do.
Free man Mugabe.
He's a free man. This time I don't know whether he's a really free man. So Freeman is really in political chaos. It is not legal chaos. It is political chaos. It is not military chaos. It is purely chaos. Because the lawyers have said, well, we don't want to recognize you, but here we are. And you must give them a hearing. And the hearing, they are protesting. What is he going to do? First of all, will he continue jailing them? That's also another issue. Because assuming somebody is going to protest, and so there would be no legal, legitimate process that will go on in that court martial, the way I see it. So, again, I go back to what I said earlier, caught between a rock and a hard place. And the only person, the only institution that can make us move forward should be the Supreme Court. Over to you, Chief Justice Alphonse Chigamoy Owinyedola.
Angelo, as
Oscar.
Abdu says, I also worried about the court martial chair. I was just thinking, how do you undo this? Because if it was, or you'd have said, take him away for 1 hour, he cools down, then he comes back. But then after taking him away, then you put 9 months.
And then there's another issue which is legal about processes of contempt of court proceedings. The authorities which are there are before the coming into force of the 1995 Constitution. And they all point to one thing, that a contempt of court crime is committed in the presence of the court itself. So you don't have to say that you are charging, you are prosecuting, the sort of thing which now people are demanding. And that, and because you see what you've done, for example, Agatha, if for example you are the judge and the lawyer, say, by the way, you are just a nicompump, you judge. And you are the judge presiding over. Would that be contempt of court? And if so, are you going to go, okay, now take him, charge him, bring me back to, and I do that, or I give evidence? That is a crime which should have been committed to the court and in the court. To the court and what? In the court. So, but that, the sort is there basically before the 1995 Constitution. So you would need now a real interpretation whether the contempt of court proceedings of some alleged action within the court should go through a proper charge sheet, trial, and so on. Because the authority is before. And if any reasonable, I should have read those before. So we are in this sort of problems. Why? Because the Supreme Court has not taken the decision it's supposed to take.
And
Back to you.
That's why I matched to the Supreme Court. There was a question when we were taken to police. And the police officer said, "You are cowards. I thought you would march to the court martial. Why didn't you dare march to the court martial?" I said, "Look, for me, I think the problem is here. Let the problem be resolved here, and the court martial continues. Maybe we will march to the court martial." But I am glad that Abdu agrees with me on that, where the problem starts from. And he's a lawyer, and I don't know, I haven't heard what he thinks the solution can be as a lawyer and other lawyers.
The solution is Supreme Court.
But it hasn't. It has not provided the solution for 4 years.
Okay. The solution would be Agatha to undress on the streets.
No,
of course
please
not.
don't.
And she wouldn't.
And she wouldn't.
And you know that's what he does. Trivializes people and things.
Oscar and Abdu.
Yeah.
Okay, what I have been, as you know, I sit on the board of a legal charity called Chapter 4. So we have been following that process for a while. My understanding is that a judgment on this matter is ready and pending.
Oh.
In other words, and I'm just saying this, and I hope I don't offend the justices on the court, but there is a judgment ready, and I think the quorum has to agree on that judgment. And so I'll join Abdu Katuntu in encouraging the Chief Justice to expedite this, especially because we are in an election year where, until we resolve this question of whether civilians can stand trial in the court martial, we might see a lot more cases going to the general court martial. There are many other things to note here. One is the legitimacy of the court martial is being undermined. When I used to hang around law school, I read a lot of really good jurisprudence from the Nigerian general court martial. Some of it was because Nigeria was under military rule for a long time, and therefore the courts there developed considerable jurisprudence. I think what the court martial can do for military justice is also being undermined by all this confusion with civilian matters. So we need to separate that. On the question of contempt of court, generally, as Abdu has indicated, an offense committed before a judge that affects the running of the court, judges have a lot of discretion in that matter. They could send you to a holding cell for 2 minutes, or they could give you a 9-month sentence. They could insist you're disbarred, and then you go through another process. I think that we have to separate this question, and it's complicated because Aaron Kiza, a civilian, is arguing before a general court martial that civilians should not be before that court, and is being held in. No, I'm just saying that the question of contempt. Okay, judges generally, whether they are in civilian courts or in a military court, have a wide discretion, and what he's being accused of, what the judge did, should be taken on its own. We have to separate that matter from whether or not civilians ought to be tried in a general court martial. For that, we shall wait for the decision of the Supreme Court.
Derek. Abdu, what you have said to Agatha is also contempt of the gang.
It should be said.
Forgiveness.
Pardon?
I'll plead guilty.
Oscar, please pronounce your sentence.
Forgiven. No 9 months. Derek.
I was listening intently to the Honorable Katuntu, and I liked his diction when it came to describing exactly what's happening in court martial, and he called it a total mess and problems. And I know he had, and chaos, and I know he had thrown my word of this country being a joke, and my description of this country culminates from very many broken institutions for me to come up with something like that. Oscar, I've been talking to the lawyers in this whole matter as a journalist, because I'm not an expert of the law, but it's just important that I talk to people who understand some of these things for me to decipher. And if it comes to time when I'm supposed to write probably, I don't know. or says I haven't gained much, I don't know.
Stop heckling. You're going to speak last on this program. So far, I'm taking that risk.
So,
It's one of the jokes we've been talking about.
no. That wise man from the east deserves respect.
Speed up.
So and I've been just trying to ask them exactly what it is that they can do in such a manner, and they're in a complete mess and chaos. Like even the people who are going to stand on the side of to stand on the side of Aaron Kiza are also caught in a very big dilemma, because they have three options. One is to appeal the sentence of the judge. The sentence of the chairman of the court martial. Two is to do the Agatha style: protest, coerce, convince, or even ask respectfully the Chief Justice to expedite the Supreme Court ruling. The third is to ask Aaron Kiza to serve the 9 months. Why? Because the same lawyers are saying, well, there is an appellate court, an appellate tribunal within the court martial. So they are saying, we want to discredit the court martial and the entire system. But if you discredit it, then you have to ask Aaron Kiza to stay in prison for 9 months, just to make sure that you don't give it credit. Two is that if Aaron Kiza says, I can't because I have very many plans, especially in this case, then you have to go and appeal, because that's one of the other options they have, to go and appeal to the tribunal and say, well, we are appealing because of the sentence. It's very harsh, 9 months. Maybe reduce it to.
Agatha has told you that they will win the appeal in the 10th month.
No, I don't think it could be maybe expedited. Then, if you can't appeal, and if you can't continue with the court martial, then you are certainly saying that the Supreme Court, everyone here is at the mercy of the Supreme Court, and whether the pronouncement of the Supreme Court overturns the decision of the chairman of the court martial at that time, then it's a subject for another discussion. But as it is now, everyone is in a mess, is in total chaos. Already, the Honorable Katuntu has said, the chairman of the court martial is in total chaos. I want to bring. That's what he said. He understands the law more than I do, and I want to bring the gang and the listeners to speed that the lawyers who are representing Aaron Kiza are in total chaos as well. So we leave everything to the Supreme Court.
Open.
Before even all comes in, the Supreme
Go
Court has
to the microphone.
recently held that appeals of the court martial can only go to the court martial appeal court.
Yes.
The civilians
It can't cross this side.
it can't cross this side.
Sorry, Abdul.
So-
say that again.
The Supreme Court, I think it's a fortnight ago,
Yes.
came up with the decision that even appeals
They have to go to
of the
tribunal.
court martial can only go to the appeals court martial.
You don't think
Yes.
You don't cross over to this. So even what happened to Council Chiza now has to go to
Court martial.
the court martial, because that seems
And
like
the lawyers
they have
want to
already
discredit
defined that one. Discrediting may not be the solution, in my view. My view is if we have to address it either by law.
Okay,
If we must
gentlemen,
now change
allow
it.
OO to close this out.
Well, if there are people who think that they are going to discredit what NRM is establishing, we wish them luck. Cecilia Gwal thought would discredit the NRM politics. We have seen her back.
We're talking about Aaron
No,
Kiza
no,
and
no,
court
no.
martial.
There are 43 lawyers. From what I read, there are 42 lawyers now. With Martha Karua, there are 43 lawyers in that case of Kiza Besigye. How come it is only Aaron Kiza who has been served, who has been sentenced to 9 months? Why him out of the 43? That's the question we should be able to answer. It is his conduct, his personal conduct. Because somebody fooled him that you can go and bang table and abuse the court process, abuse the judges, abuse the bench, abuse the prosecution in the way he did. And if there are lawyers or civilians who think that they are going to win by that way, we wish them luck. Me, I would urge the court martial to be very tough. Because part of our problem in Uganda is actually the indiscipline of the civilians. Civilians think that they can do things and get away with. And so if you want to think that way, we are going to be tough on you.
And follow the rules.
Follow the
law.
No,
The civilian, aren't you?
I am not the civilian of your type. I'm not a civilian. That's why I have some discipline.
You have no number.
That's up to you. My number is not supposed to be known to you.
No, the number is a public
It is
one.
not the institution. But
Abdul,
anyway,
stop
the
heckling.
point I'm making is,
I want you to also
Aaron-
make a point that the
Aaron
court martial
Kiza-
should follow the rules, follow the law.
and if the court martial has not followed the rules, there are ways to appeal, to challenge the decisions of the court martial. The court martial is not God. It can be challenged, but there are prescribed ways of challenging it. You don't challenge it by abusing the chairman by abusing the court process. And that should even go for the civilian court. But I think some of these lawyers, especially the young ones like Agatha, have taken the same academics banging the table literally. I have written an article today that you lawyers don't bang the table for NRM. People have banged the table for NRM, and I have listed it there. I've written an article today, and I've listed the number of people who have tried to bang tables for NRM, and how each of them has been dealt with, and how each of them have ended. So,
just takes the tables away.
yeah. NRM just didn't bang the table. It destroyed the table and rebuilt afresh and better.
How did it do so without banging it?
So if you think you can bang for NRM tables senselessly, you are really you are in a wrong place. You lawyers, for you to think that you are the ones going to
Okay.
that you lawyers you are the ones going to undo what NRM.
I
is
have
doing.
never banged tables.
No, I'm using the word bang table. Like you now, you think you can force the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice to make decisions by marching.
But protesting
Because
is a constitutional right. Why do you guys see it as a crime?
Under our constitution, the judiciary and the judicial officers are not supposed to be influenced by forces outside. So for you even to say you want to build external pressure on the Chief Justice, on the judiciary to make a decision
because
one
they've
way or the
delayed
other.
for 4 years.
No, but there are ways.
A case that is having
If
implications
a
every
judge,
day.
Agatha, have switched off your
if a
microphone.
judge misbehaves, there are prescribed ways to challenge the misbehavior or the indiscipline of the judge, of the magistrate. You don't say we are marching, we are calling a mob to march to the Supreme Court so that the Chief Justice makes a decision.
Thank you.
If you think so, that's outside the constitutional framework, outside the legal framework. Trying to
Agatha, you're not on microphone and we are
do a
closing.
mob for the Chief Justice, to do a mob for a judge.
Thank you,
You are in the wrong place, and I think the Chief Justice should just ignore your noise. That's just noise. Go and make an argument in the court premise.
Thank you,
court
Oo.
chambers. That's where you should
Thank
make
you,
the argument
listeners of the Capital
against
Gang.
against
Thank
the delayed
you,
process.
Honorable Abdul Katuntu. Thank you,
So
Ofono Pondo.
Aaron Kizas,
Thank
those,
you,
those
Agatha Tuhaire.
they should be jailed. They should be jailed. In
Thank
fact, for me, I
you,
think
Derek
he was given
Wandera.
a short sentence.
Thank you.
That's why you are not a judge.
Thank you, Angela Izama. Ofono Pondo, on a good note, thank you for the farm, organic goodies from the farm. This is a better submission than this last one.
Yeah, I brought
So we thank you so much.
Pumpkins
Yeah.
and
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you. I am Oscar Semoyam Soke, and I shall see you next week.